Hi everybody, welcome to the show. Hello everyone, welcome back to Raising A to Z, this YouTube channel all about homeschooling. My name is Amanda, I am a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, and a question I got recently that I felt is a question that I get often, I feel like maybe I should answer it, is how do you stay focused on getting your curriculum done in a year? And how do you get back on track if you've been off track for a while? And I feel that's a really common question, and I feel like it's something that a lot of especially new homeschool parents kind of struggle with because we have some ideas. We have ideas of like what the day is supposed to be. We have ideas on how we'd like things to go. And sometimes we have like things just don't work out that way. Sometimes we have days where like we really don't want to do schoolwork with our kids and our kids don't want to do schoolwork. Some days we have a million things going on and it just makes like school seem like the last possible thing to be doing. And sometimes we aren't in a position where we can on that day or for a couple of days. It happens. It recently happened to me. April was a very rough month for us, especially like the beginning half of April. It all started when we had to take our dog in to get neutered. What was supposed to be a quick procedure turned into a much more complicated and drawn out procedure. He didn't respond well to his pain meds, which he really needed because of the procedure that he ended up having. And he had vomiting and diarrhea for like a week straight. I had to make him a special diet. It was a whole thing. Just as he got better, Zoe got the stomach flu. Okay. So like we're already into like almost about a week and a half of like in survival mode. Then during all of this, we also had air conditioning installed, but they didn't tell us when they were coming or how long they were going to be here and how extensive it was or if it was going to be noisy, which it was very, very noisy. And they were literally working in our activity room and our homeschool space. So that was a disruption. And then not long after they left, the entire family got COVID. Needless to say, it was a solid like 3.5 weeks that we were just off track. We didn't touch workbooks. We didn't do any spelling or math or, in fact, I ended up just scrapping my entire unit study for the month of April. Like we just didn't do it. We read a couple books, but we just didn't do the entire month of April unit study because at that point it became a situation of like, we're done. I was like, that's it. Let's just start fresh in May. And that's exactly what we're doing. There are going to be times where like homeschooling is just not going to be something you can do. And you're going to feel like you're off track and you're going to have to get back on track. And that whole time that you're off track, you're feeling like we need to stay focused. And it can be a really complicated thing. So I'm going to give you a couple of my things that I like to think about when I'm trying to get back on track or when I'm struggling with staying focused. First, if you guys like this channel, if you like all the things that I talk about on here, can you take a second to go down and subscribe and click the bell to get notifications? That way you know when I put out new videos. And if you guys have questions that you want me to answer or topics you want me to cover, please leave a comment below because I would love to cover those topics for you. Part of staying focused is having goals. I think a lot of parents who are kind of unschooling or kind of being a little bit more child-led just think they were just gonna la-da-da and take off and run through fields of flowers and everything's just going to work out. And I think that's a little bit unrealistic. I think you need to have some goals, whether it is what kind of curriculum you want to get done, what kind of topics you want to cover, or what kind of skills you want your kids to focus on for that year and using their interests to do that. There's going to be you need to have some goals, and you need to have goals that are set at different time periods, different lengths. And being realistic with those goals I think is really, really important when it comes to staying focused. So I typically do my planning over the span of a year. But how that works is I do have entire months where we are not doing any new curriculum. We might be finishing up what curriculum we have. We might be doing some like review of concepts we've learned in the past year. But there are entire chunks where we're not doing anything new. That gives me time and my kids time to work on other things and do other things. And that kind of gives me also a little bit of a buffer that if we have to take a whole month off, like we did, it's very easy that I'm not going to not fall behind, but I'm going to have time to get through that before the next academic year. Like I'm not on such a tight schedule that like if I miss a week or miss a day, that my entire schedule is going to fall apart. You know what I mean? So being really realistic, I think, with your goals with your kids and what you want to accomplish is important. I know some people who their goal when it comes to completing their curriculum with their kids is May, and they start in September. So really it ends up being about 9 months that their goal is to get through all of their curriculum in 9 months. And that's a lot of curriculum to cover in the span of 9 months, especially when you are taking time off for things like Christmas or winter break, spring break, something like that. If you're taking those time off and you're trying to cover, that can be a little unrealistic. And it also is setting you kind of up for failure, because when May comes and you're not done, you feel like you have really failed. And really that's a really unrealistic expectation. Yes, it would be nice. Like I know someone who does this, and her goal is always to be done in May. And it's a nice goal because then her kids can play outside more when the weather is nice up here in Canada. But is it realistic? Not really, right? Like my kids still play outside 5 or 6 hours a day, and we're doing the same amount of work, right? But we're going a little bit longer, and we have a little bit more flexibility in that because my goal is not to be done by a certain time. Some people like that. Some people it's really good and helpful, but I'm just saying if that is what you want and you need an end date to your school year, that's fine. Just be realistic about what it is, especially when it comes to thinking that kids who are homeschooled are often covering a lot more than what's being taught in the public school. It's a lot more intensive because it is one-on-one or in much smaller groups, and they are covering a lot more in a shorter amount of time. So it can be a lot for kids as well as a lot for parents. A good tip for helping you stay focused is to actually plan breaks. I know this sounds really counterintuitive to plan your breaks, but if you have little pockets of time or like weeks where you are not doing curriculum, you're just taking like a week off throughout your year, it can actually work out really, really well. So because we homeschool all year round, I do have certain weeks where we do take time off, and these are great because then I can focus on something else, something that is not academic, and I can get a few things done that normally get me off focus of school. So I might take a week off and spend a whole week doing like a spring clean. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, I do a fall clean. I like to clean in August, but like I will take an entire week and just like clean the house, reorganize, do all that, and it's already built into my schedule that's what we're gonna do. I will plan a day like in the fall where I will like switch over all the clothes in my house, which is a huge job. Fall and spring, that's a big job. Switch all the like summer gear over to like their snowsuits and winter gear, all their clothes from summer clothes to winter clothes, make sure I have all the sizings, see what I need. That ends up being a big job. That takes me a full day. I actually schedule time into my schedule to do that, having kind of a week or a time where I can do that. It means that I can focus on things that need to be done in the house, and I don't need to focus on their schooling. And then when I come back, it's very easy to like just pick up and focus on their school for a little while because I get a little bit more balance between the mom life and the homeschool life, right? So those are kind of my biggest things. The other thing that really helps me stay on focus is having a really great schedule or a routine. I have a whole video about rhythms over routines and how scheduling can be a really, really helpful tool when it comes to homeschooling. I'll put a link up here. And I think that's a really good key for not only staying focused because you kind of have a rhythm of like what happens every single day, but it's also a great tool to getting you back on focus when you've been off for a little while, because I already know what happens on those days. So we've been off for a little while. We're all feeling better now. I know that now that we're better, come Monday, I know exactly what my Monday is going to look like. I know exactly what my Tuesday is going to look like. And I don't really need to think about that in terms of like, okay, what's the day going to look like? What lessons are we doing? We just pick up where we left off. And this is the kind of our schedule of what happens on a Monday. It works out really well. And having that structure is very good for getting back into a routine once you've been off it for a little while out of necessity or out of just you need a break. Now, I will say, if you are someone who is struggling to stay focused throughout the year, your routine might be something you need to look at. If you're finding you're struggling with your routine and with your schedule, and that it could actually be the thing that is knocking you off of focus. My routine, it's great. It works really well for our family. That's what we're doing right now. It helps us stay focused, but it also fits our family. So for example, we don't get up and do schoolwork at 7 a.m. because I'm not a morning person. And yet I do see people out there who are like, man, we just feel like we're always behind and we're struggling. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to get their schoolwork done at like 7:30 or 8 in the morning because that's what the family down the street is doing. And they're not morning people. And so if they don't get it done by a certain time, they feel like they've lost the momentum of the day and they feel defeated already. So I think it's important that you make sure that your schedule is fitting your family, fitting your family's flow and natural rhythms, and that it is actually working with you and for you and not against you. If you're struggling all the time, check your routine, see if you need to shift your schedule or shift your routine. I always remind homeschool parents that I adjust our routine about 3 times a year. And sometimes it's a little thing like, oh, we're just, gymnastics is not on Wednesdays anymore, it's on Tuesdays. And sometimes it's a whole big shift of like, okay, it's gonna be something totally different for the next 4 months. And it follows different flows of the seasons, different things, and that's okay. Sometimes you just need to like readjust, and that's good. So if you're really struggling and you're finding it really hard to stay focused for long periods of time or like stay in a good rhythm, check your schedule and see if that is maybe part of your problem and readjust from there. So how do you get back into staying focused? How do you get back on schedule or back into your routine? I think a really great thing to focus on is when you're off or when you're struggling with getting back in your routine is to prioritize. When we were off in the first kind of like week back, I made the conscious decision, like I said, to drop our unit study. I'm not doing it. It is just too much for us right now. I'm gonna feel like I didn't get enough done because we didn't do any of it. I don't want to rush my kids. I don't want to rush myself in trying to do something. Our unit was writers, so I don't want to like rush my kids through trying to like produce a short storybook. Like, it's not going to work trying to do that in a week. My plan was to have all month, but we were too sick for that. So we just dropped it. Like, we just dropped that and we focused on things that I could do that were going to be a little bit easier, or a little bit more structured for us. I didn't really have to think about it, kind of giving myself a little bit of time, like a full week, to kind of like slowly get back into what we were doing. And so we just focused on math and language arts, so spelling and grammar and reading some books. Like, that was our focus for those couple of days where we were just kind of getting back into things. So we got back into like, okay, every morning we're getting up after we have breakfast, we're getting dressed, we are going to do some schoolwork, we are going to like sit down and do some seat work together, work through our workbooks a little bit, but it wasn't the full block that I normally do. But I did prioritize kind of 1 or 2 subjects and we focused on those. And it was kind of a nice ease in. Sometimes that's what you need to do, is you need to ease in. And if we're in a time where we're struggling to focus on things, where like there's a lot going on, again, I will just focus on language and math and we'll just pick everything else up when we get around to it. So priorities. I also think it's important that after you've had something that has knocked you off your schedule, especially if you've kind of been thrown off your schedule and off your routine, to take some time to rest and to get back into it. Taking some time to rest and to recover and reset is actually a really good plan. After we kind of all recovered from COVID, we did start doing our workbooks a little bit more. And we were kind of getting back into that. But there was some days where I was like, hey, we're not doing them today. Today we are just gonna like hang out. We're gonna watch some shows, we'll read some books. That's gonna be kind of like what you guys have, free play. And I took the day to kind of like focus on getting something done in the house to kind of help me reset. So I focused on getting laundry, on cleaning out like our kitchen area and our main floor, getting that reset after basically being bedridden for like 3 days. I was able to kind of like take some time and reset our house, so my head wasn't cluttered, so our house wasn't cluttered. We didn't have to go looking for laundry because it was actually all washed and folded. And I focused on that for the morning, and then in the afternoon we just kind of like lazed around and chilled and rested. And I think it's important to remember that we as adults, we do that. Like, we take days where we rest. We take days where we kind of like reset and reprioritize, reorganize spaces to help us maximize what it can be. We can do that with our homeschooling too. So we can plan days or take days where we're like, you know what? The academics is just not going to happen today. I'm too distracted by the mess. So instead of school, we're going to tidy up, or we're going to do all the laundry because I haven't done laundry in a week and a half, or whatever you need to do. That's not only a good thing for you and your mental health, it's a good skill to teach kids. And sometimes we need to stop what we're trying to force productivity and forcing getting things done, and actually focus on what's going to help us function in life that will eventually lead us back to productivity and getting through what we need to do. Plan some time to take a break and to reset and refocus your space and your mind and your body, and that's okay. It works, it's very helpful, and it's good for you. And whenever I have parents who are like, oh, we haven't done workbooks in weeks, I always want to remind them, learning is more than school. Sometimes kids get through the most stuff and the most interesting learning when we don't have workbooks in front of them. When we had COVID, I had it the worst. Lucky mom. The girls basically just had fevers every evening for like 3 days, but they would also be fine all day long. Nothing, absolutely fine. My husband had one day of feeling fatigued. One day. I was literally on the couch for like almost 3 days. But you know, whatever. Everyone's different. But during that time was kind of interesting because I'm laying on the couch, sleeping and watching TV and not really being able to do much. But I'm also watching my kids in our living area, like our living room area. And they're playing with a box. They're creating, they're imagining. And if you're listening to what they're doing as they're having this like free play, which is more free play than they ever get, because I'm a big proponent of free play, but when mom is on the couch, you get to free play all day, right? And the things that they're talking about and the things that they're discussing are all things that we have been talking about when it comes to school. So they're using words that they've learned or that we've read. They're talking about characters from different stories that they've read or that we've talked about. They're reinterpreting, like they're talking about diving into the ocean and going through the different, going down to the Twilight Zone. So they're actually playing, but they're also learning, and they're also processing what they've already learned. And I think that's something we need to make sure that we remind ourselves, that just because kids aren't doing what we think they need to be doing academically doesn't mean they're not learning. It doesn't mean they're not processing what they're learning. So sometimes if you're just taking a break, your kids are still going to experience education and learning. They're still going to get chances to be creative. They're still going to get chances to test their fine motor skills if they're coloring or drawing or doing word searches, like whatever your kids are into, right? Problem solving and literacy, like you're getting all kinds of things that are learning, but they're just not what we typically in education would consider like academic skills. But they're all skills that are important and skills that are going to help your kids in the future. So it is easy to get off track. It is, everyone does it. Even teachers in public school get off track and have to figure out how to get back on track. But we just pick up and we move on. I like to tell parents and remind parents that we're homeschooling. We're not on the school schedule. We're not on anyone's schedule, really. And we get to determine what our goals are. We get to determine how hard and fast those goals are and those timelines are. And we get to determine what is best for our kids. And sometimes that means taking a break and getting off track for a little bit. And sometimes that means staying really focused and kind of getting back on track. And you're the one who can help them do that and see how to balance rest and relaxation and processing of what you've learned, as well as introducing new topics and new ideas and new concepts. It's a balancing act, and it needs both. It's not just about shoving information to our kids' heads. It's about giving them time to rest and absorb what they've learned as well. I hope this helped. I hope this was informational for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys like this video, make sure that you hit the thumbs up. And if you want to follow along as I get ourselves back on track and we start a new unit today, make sure that you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.